The stranger on the sidewalk. It was a gray morning in San Francisco, the kind that felt like the sky itself was holding its breath. The streets were damp from last night's rain, and the city hadn't quite woken up yet. People rushed past one, another with coffee cups in hand, coats pulled tightly around them, eyes fixed on screens or destinations. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, walked quietly among them, unnoticed. He liked mornings like these. Didn't travel with a security team when he could avoid it, especially not today. He had a habit of walking alone in silence before big meetings. Today's meeting was huge, something about a new initiative that could impact millions. But right now, Sundar needed to think, to breathe. To not be CEO for a little while, he turned onto a quieter street just off Market. It was there he saw him. A man sat slouched against a cold brick wall, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing, beard tangled, hands trembling slightly from the morning chill. There was a cardboard sign next to him, barely legible. It said nothing about food, nothing about help. It simply read, "Can you give me $1?" The man looked up as Sundar approached, eyes sharp but exhausted, face weathered not just by time but by experience. Their eyes locked. "Can you give me $1?" Man asked. Sundar stopped. He didn't say anything right away. He just looked at the man, then at the sign. Most people walked past without even turning their heads, but Sundar was not most people, not today. "Why $1?" Sundar finally asked, voice gentle. The man gave a small smile, not sarcastic. Just ... tired. "Because if I ask for 10, people think I'll use it for drugs. If I ask for nothing, they don't notice me at all." Sundar didn't respond. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and took out a crisp $1 bill. But instead of handing it to the man, he sat down beside him on the concrete. Man blinked. People don't sit beside him. They walk faster. They look away. They pretend he doesn't exist. This man, whoever he was different. "What's your name?" Sundar asked. "Liam," the man said after a pause, unsure if it mattered. "I'm Sundar." "Sundar, that's a nice name. Thank you." "So Liam." Looked down at his fingers. Liam looked down at his fingers. They were calloused, bruised. He rubbed them together like he was trying to remember what they used to be good at. "What happened?" Liam said with a faint laugh. "Life happened. Lost my wife to cancer 5 years ago. Lost my job 6 months after that. Then lost myself." It's funny how grief doesn't show up all at once. It creeps in. One day you wake up and you single, pour, here. Sundar was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Liam shrugged, though his eyes betrayed something deeper. "It's okay. Not the worst thing, being invisible. Sometimes it feels like a superpower, but you still want $1. Superpowers don't keep you warm." Sundar nodded, then slowly handed him the dollar. Liam looked at it for a moment, like it was more than paper, like it was dignity, recognition, or maybe just a reminder that he was still part of the world. "Thank you," Liam said, his voice softer now. "You're welcome." They sat in silence for a while, two men from two different worlds, sharing. A moment most would overlook. And then Sundar did something unexpected. He asked, "Liam, can I buy you breakfast?" Liam stared. "Are you serious?" "I am." "Why?" "Because I don't believe this is where your story ends." Liam's mouth opened, then closed. It had been a long time since anyone talked to him like that. They went to a small diner around the corner. It wasn't fancy, but the coffee was. Hot, and the waitress smiled like she meant it. Liam ordered eggs and toast, almost embarrassed by how hungry he was. Sundar ordered the same. As they ate, they talked, and slowly, like a fog lifting, Liam began to remember pieces of himself. He used to work in tech. It's not at Sundar's level, of course, but he had once built things too. He had ideas, passion, somewhere inside him. It was all still there, just buried under years of silence and struggle. After breakfast, Sundar stood up and looked Liam in the eye. "I have to go to a meeting now," he said, "but I'd like to see you again. Is that okay?" Liam didn't know what to say. He nodded. Sundar reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Not the kind with his title or office address. This one was different. It had only a name, a number, and a small note that said, "Use this when you're ready to remember who you are." Liam held it like it was fragile. As Sundar turned to leave, Liam called out, double quotes, "Hey, Sundar." "Yes. Why did you stop? Why me?" Sundar paused, then smiled. "Because once, someone did the same for me." And with that, he disappeared into the crowd. But Liam stayed where he was, holding the card, holding the moment. He didn't know it yet, but that $1, that one breakfast, was about to change everything. And just when he thought the world had forgotten him, the world reached out its hand and said, "Not yet." But what Sundar didn't know, what Liam didn't tell him, is that he wasn't just any homeless man. He was hiding something big, and that secret was about to pull Sundar into a story far bigger than either of them ever imagined. The man who knew too much. Next morning, Sundar stood in his kitchen, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Sunlight spilled across the marble countertop, but he didn't notice it. He kept thinking about Liam, not just the man, but the look in his eyes. There was a moment, brief but unmistakable, when Liam spoke about his past, where his voice faltered, where he hesitated like he was skipping over something big. Sundar had learned to listen between words. Being the CEO of one of the world's biggest companies meant constantly reading what people didn't say. And Liam, with his quiet pauses and worn-out shoes, wasn't just broken. He was hiding. The card Sundar had given him wasn't a test, but the more he thought about it, the more he hoped Liam would use it. There was something unfinished in that man's story. And Sundar couldn't stop feeling like he'd stepped into the first page of something huge without realizing it. Meanwhile, Liam sat alone in a dusty public library, 3 blocks from the diner where they'd shared breakfast. The building smelled of old paper and older secrets. He hadn't held a phone in weeks, hadn't used a computer in months, and yet here he was, hunched over a keyboard, eyes darting across the screen like muscle memory had never left him. Fingers danced in silence. He wasn't looking up housing or food stamps. No, Liam was logged into something deeper, something secure, something no homeless man should have access to. In the quiet glow of the monitor, the screen revealed a diagram, network nodes, encrypted keys, and a sequence of dates. In the corner, a small, blinking red dot. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered under his breath, "It's still live." What Sundar didn't know, and couldn't have guessed, is that Liam wasn't always called Liam. 6 years ago, he had another name, a clean apartment, and a quiet job in a place no one was supposed to talk about. He worked in data security. For a government contractor, an expert in systems that weren't meant to be broken, he had a mind built for code and patterns. But when his wife fell sick, he stepped back. And when she passed, he broke in ways even code couldn't fix. Walked away from everything. But he took something with him. It's not on purpose, not at first. It was just an old arc of files he meant to delete. Files he barely glanced at. But now, with time and clarity, he knew what he had seen. And someone else knew too, though someone who hadn't forgotten him. On the 3rd day, the phone rang. Sundar was in a boardroom surrounded by numbers, charts, people talking in circles when his assistant stepped in quietly and handed him a note. "Call from Liam. Says he remembers who he is." Sundar excused himself without a word. He walked into a nearby office and closed the door. The call was still active. "Liam," he said. "You said to call." When I remembered, came the voice, shakier than before but focused. "Well, I remembered. I think I made a mistake. A big one." "What kind of mistake? The kind that can get people hurt, including you, me?" "You shouldn't have talked to me, Sundar. But now that you did, I can't leave you out of it. I need your help." "With what?" "With staying alive." The line went dead. That night, Sundar couldn't sleep. He sat by his window, looking out at the city that glittered like a promise and a threat all at once. He was a man of logic, not paranoia. He trusted systems, processes, and people, at least the ones who earned it. But something about Liam's voice made his skin crawl in a way he hadn't felt since his early days in Silicon Valley. When startups crashed overnight and secrets leaked faster than they were built. And underneath it all was something else. Guilt. He'd seen the spark in Liam's eyes at breakfast. Seen the buried intelligence, the flicker of someone trying to find their way back. And now that man was being hunted by something Sundar couldn't name. The next day, a package arrived at Sundar's house. Number name, no return address, just a small flash drive inside a plain envelope. He plugged it into a clean machine offline, paranoid out of instinct. On it was a single folder called a second chance. Inside were documents, emails, code logs, and one video. He clicked on the video. The footage was grainy, black and white. Surveillance from what looked like a data center. Man entered. It was Liam, thinner, sharper, eyes colder. Behind him were two others. He tapped a few keys, then inserted something into a terminal. The other men stood back. Then the lights flickered. Something changed. The screen cut out, the video ended. With a single line of text, "If you're watching this, I'm already in danger." Sundar leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. None of this made sense, and yet it did. Liam wasn't just running, he was holding on to something people wanted buried. And now, Sundar, without even meaning to, had picked up the thread. He picked up his phone, dialed a secure line. Not to security, not to lawyers, to someone he hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey," he said when the line picked up, "I need a favor. Off the books." "Who is it for?" the voice asked. "Someone I met on the sidewalk," Sundar replied. "But I think he used to work for the government." A pause. "You're kidding." "Not. What's his name?" "He goes by Liam now." "Now?" "Yeah, okay," said the voice. "Then we've got a problem." A long silence followed. Then the voice said something that chilled Sundar more than anything else had in years. "I think that man was declared dead 5 years ago." Dead men can't run off as Sundar sat in was designed to feel secure. Bulletproof glass, biometric locks.
House soundproofing.
So perfect it made silence feel loud. But today, none of it helped. His mind wouldn't sit still. Across from him, on a private video call, sat Maya Thorna, name almost no one in the public knew. But in the back corridors of intelligence and digital warfare, she was a legend. Sharp, fast-talking eyes that didn't blink unless she meant it. Sundar had worked with her once years ago. On a quiet deal between Silicon Valley and Washington's, something small on paper, but enormous beneath the surface. They hadn't spoken. Since today she looked older but no less lethal. Her face was serious, her voice low. Each word weighed like a loaded gun. "Liam Brennan," she said. Former systems engineer. Contracted under a fake firm called Silvatronics. They weren't building anything public. It was data refinement, anomaly detection, AI-assisted behavioral prediction. Basically a government crystal ball for threat. "Assessment? Sound normal so far?" Sundar nodded, though his mouth was dry. "It was all clean," she continued. "Until the wrong people got wind of what the system could really do. Liam was good. Too good. He figured out someone was manipulating. The data changing predictions to justify false actions. Fake threats, misdirected strikes, targeting groups that weren't on any danger list. And worse, the signatures were being rerouted through international proxies. It was a setup. Someone inside was using the tech to launder decisions, and Liam found it. He didn't just find it, she said. He tried to expose it. What happened? He vanished. Maya leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper, even though they were both in secure rooms. They made it look like suicide. Left a note, cleared his records.
Even did it.
Shallow, obit standard playbook. Only a few of us ever questioned it, and even fewer had the guts to dig. Sundar's mind spun. All this time, he thought he was helping a man get back on his feet. Now he realized he might have pulled a ghost. Back into the light. Someone, somewhere, would not be happy about that. Where is he now? Maya asked. I don't know, Sundar admitted. He called me once, said he was in danger, and then sent me a flash drive. Maya's brow furrowed. Then we need to find him before they do. Because if they even suspect he's alive, he won't stay that way for long. Meanwhile, Liam was hiding. Not from the cold, not from hunger, but from the eyes he used to track for a living. He knew how surveillance worked. He understood how phones could be pinged, how faces could be matched, how even a simple credit card swipe could give someone away. He moved through the city like smoke, silent, invisible, choosing places where security cameras were broken or misaligned. He shaved his beard in a bus station bathroom, changed into clean thrift store clothes, and slept in libraries, always near exits. He had one goal now: reach the one person he still trusted. The one person who might be able to help him disappear. Again, this time properly. Her name was Dr. Alina Prasad. Years ago, she worked in the same program, but on the ethics team, a role that often meant being ignored until it was too late. She was the first to warn Liam that something in the system felt off. She told him to be careful. He hadn't listened then. Now he wished he had. Alina worked at a small university now, teaching ethics and technology, an irony that made Liam smirk as he watched her from a distance on campus. She hadn't changed much. Same sharp eyes, same no-nonsense posture. He waited until the sun dipped low, when shadows grew longer and crowds thinner. He approached her quietly, afraid of what her face might say. "Alina," he whispered. She turned, and for a moment time froze. She stared at him as if seeing a ghost. Without warning, she slapped him across the face. "You're alive," she hissed, tears forming. "You absolute idiot." "I know," he said, rubbing his cheek. "Why now? Why show up?" "Because it's not over," Liam said. "And they're not done." Inside her office, after locking the door and pulling the blinds, Liam explained. Everything's the corrupted data, the attempts to disappear, in his meeting with Sundar Pichai. Alina listened in stunned silence. When he finished, she stood by the window, her silhouette tense. "You have no idea how deep this goes, Liam," she said finally. "The people who buried you, they've only gotten stronger. They built newer systems, smarter ones. This time, they don't just predict behavior, they influence it. They use data to shape decisions before people even think they've made them." Liam felt his stomach sink. "Then we have to stop it." Lena turned slowly. "How?" "By telling the truth." She laughed, once dry and bitter. "Truth? To who?" "The media. They'll bury the story under the next scandal. To Congress, half of them are in on it. To the public, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist before the first word's out of your mouth." Liam looked down. "Then we leak it. You do that, you're dead within 48 hours. Liam didn't respond, because he already knew. Back at Google's campus, Sundar paced in his private office, eyes locked on the flash drive's data. He noticed something new, a subfolder he'd missed before, buried under a misnamed extension. Inside it was a single audio file. He played it static. Then a voice, not Liam's, a different one. Male, cold, precise. "If you're hearing this, then the insurance didn't work. He's alive. Find him. Eliminate the asset, and anyone he talks to." The file ended, and that's when Sundar realized he wasn't just helping a man. He was now a target, and someone had just put a price on his head. Nowhere is apathy. First thing Sundar noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums in your ears when something's wrong. His office, usually buzzing with quiet footsteps, distant keyboards, the subtle rhythm of an empire running, was still, unnaturally still. He turned away from his monitor, a strange chill crawling up his spine. There was no knock, no voice, just a man standing in the doorway who hadn't been there seconds ago. Dressed in black, no badge, no smile, just eyes like polished stone. He didn't blink, didn't breathe wrong. And Sundar understood immediately this wasn't an employee, this wasn't a guest. This was a warning, Mr. Pichai. The man said calmly, like they'd scheduled a meeting neither of them wanted to attend. "We need to talk." "About what?" Sundar asked, keeping his voice flat. Inside, his pulse raced. "About your friend, Liam." The name dropped between them like a hammer. Sundar didn't respond. The man stepped closer, slowly, like a wolf crossing frozen lake. "We're concerned about your involvement. We believe you may have come into possession of some materials that could compromise national security." "Who are you?" Sundar asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't come. Just a concerned agency. That was all. No name. No initials. Just threat wrapped in a polite smile. The man reached into his coat and placed something on Sundar's deskaphone. Not his. Not any brand he recognized. Sleek black, unbranded. If he contacts you again, use this. It will keep you safe. Just like that, he left. No sound, no trace. The only proof of his visit was the phone, sitting there like a silent bomb. Across the city, Liam sat hunched in the back of a moving train, his reflection bouncing in the window beside him. Alina had warned him not to stay in one place too long. They'd already spotted someone watching the university. He'd slipped away using back exits and timed movements, and now every second felt like a countdown. He held a cheap flip phone, burner number he'd memorized before he burned the rest. He wanted to call Sundar, to warn him. But something inside him hesitated. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the dawning realization that pulling Sundar into this had been selfish. But the world didn't wait for clean decisions as he stepped off the train. A man brushed past him, casual, but to clean for this part of town. Liam turned, instinct kicking in. The man didn't look back, but his pace shifted slightly faster, tighter. Liam ducked into an alley, pulled the hood of his jacket up, and disappeared through a maze of back streets. It was starting. They'd found him. He didn't go back to Elena. It was too risky now. Instead, he went to the only place left where he could hide in plain sight, a church near the edge of town. It wasn't the religion. It was the anonymity. Nobody asked questions there. He slept in the pews, kept his back to the wall, watched everyone. Meanwhile, Sundar sat in a parked car in a grocery store lot. The strange phone in his hand, thumb hovering over the screen. He'd spent the entire day walking through his building like nothing had changed, smiling in meetings, pretending the world wasn't cracking underneath him. But now, with night folded around him and headlights like ghosts passing by, he felt the weight. Not just of Liam's story, but of his own choices. This wasn't about kindness anymore. This was survival, and maybe justice. Maybe he finally called the only person who might know what to do. Not Maya this time. Someone even deeper. A man named Rafi, an exanalyst, who had vanished from public life after a whistleblowing scandal no one dared publish. Sundar had met him once at a retreat years ago. They'd talked about ethics and data. Rafi had laughed and said, "Ethics and data is like oxygen in space, noble." But imaginary Rafi answered after 2 rings. "You shouldn't be calling me," he said without saying hello. "Liam Brennan's alive," Sundar said. Long pause. "You're serious?" "He sent me something. And now they've come to visit." "Do not use your normal phone again," Rafi snapped. "Do not go back to your home. And whatever you do, do not trust anyone who finds you first." "Then who do I trust?" "No." 1. The line went dead. Sundar sat in the silence, heart pounding. He looked at the grocery store window. Inside, people were laughing, buying bread, arguing over cereal. Everything felt normal, but his world had tilted and no one else seemed to notice. And across the city, in a candlelit chapel, Liam opened a folded piece of paper he had kept in his coat. It was part of the original archive. Not data. Not code. A name. Just one name. Written in a woman's handwriting. Someone he hadn't thought about in years. Someone who was supposed to be dead. And under that name, written faintly in pencil, was a message that chilled him to the bone. They knew before we did. Trust no one. Not even her. His hand trembled, because her was his wife, the one he'd buried 5 years ago. Asterisk the woman in the photograph. First time Liam saw her again, he almost forgot how to breathe. He'd broken into the archives at an abandoned data bunker north of the city, an old facility he once helped design. Buried under layers of false paperwork and long-dead access codes, he didn't expect it to still be functional. But when he powered up the old servers, listening to the hum rise from beneath the floor like something coming back to life, the monitors lit up with pieces of his past that had no right to still exist. Surveillance footage, chat logs, decrypted fragments, and one folder marked witness retention. Inside it was her picture. Rachel Brennan, alive. Not in a hospital, not in a grave, but seated in a room, smiling. Timestamp. 6 months ago. Liam backed away from the screen like it had punched him in the chest. His wife had died in his arms. Cancer, long and brutal. He remembered the weight of her body, the fading pulse, the funeral, the dirt, the silence after. But now he wasn't sure. What he'd buried, maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was the life they were supposed to have. Or maybe it had all been a lie so clean, so perfectly shaped. He'd swallowed it whole. His hands shook as he scrolled through the footage. Each frame was worse than the last. Rachel laughing, talking to someone off camera. No signs of pain, no sign of illness. She looked healthier than she ever did during those final months. And that's when it hit him. The medication, the doctors. The reports he'd never understood. Maybe they weren't meant to cure her. Maybe they weren't even meant for her. Maybe she wasn't sick at all. Meanwhile, Sundar stood on a rooftop across town, wind whipping at his coat, phone pressed to his ear. He hadn't been home in days, hadn't spoken to anyone except for Rafi and Maya. Even his closest advisors didn't know where he was. Out. And yet, somehow, he still didn't feel hidden. Not really. He had the feeling of being watched, not by eyes, but by systems. Cameras, drones, predictive software, things he'd helped shape. The tools of convenience now turned to instruments of control. He looked out over the city, wondering how long before he disappeared too. We found something, Maya's voice said through the static. Someone's been erasing logs, not just digital ones, hospital records, legal filings, death certificates. It's messy, but it all points to one person, Sundar asked, though part of him already knew. Rachel Brennan closed his eyes. Liam's wife? Either she never died, or someone used her identity for something. Either way, she's connected to everything. Sundar didn't speak. The city below twinkled like a machine pretending to be a miracle. All those lights, all those lives. And somewhere in the middle of it, a man who just wanted $1 was trying to rewrite the story he'd been told. Later that night, Liam sat in the back of an abandoned church bus, parked behind the chapel, rain hammering the roof like it wanted. He stared at the photograph in his hand. The real one, printed, not digital. It had been buried in the envelope with his name on it, hidden in that folder for God knew how long. Her smile was the same, soft, familiar. But now it felt like a mask he didn't recognize, a trap he'd once loved. He lit a match, not to burn the photo, but just to watch the flame. Something about the way it flickered made him feel alive again. And as the light danced, his thoughts spiraled back to the early days, the long nights of coding, of ambition, of believing he could build something that made the world safer. He remembered the talks with Rachel, the way she used to challenge him, push him to question everything. But now he wondered if she was challenging him even then, leading him, nudging him toward something he didn't yet see. Maybe she wasn't. A victim. Maybe she was part of it all. He picked up the phone and called Sundar. When the line connected, they didn't greet each other. They were past that now. I found her, Liam said. What do you mean? Sundar asked, already knowing. He wouldn't like the answer. She's alive. Or at least she was, 6 months ago. Sundar went quiet. Then do you want to find her? Liam let the question hang in the air. Then finally, I need to, but not to save her, I think. I need to find out if she ever really existed. That was the moment everything shifted, because now the mission wasn't just about exposing a system or escaping a shadow network. It was about memory, about love turned into illusion, about what happens when the one person you trusted might be the one who broke you, and neither of them knew that by chasing Rachel. They were walking into the final layer of the maze, one built not of walls, but of mirrors. The weight of $1 buildings stood on the edge of the city, forgotten by time and too far from money to be noticed. It used to be a research facility, the kind buried behind shell companies and fake janitors. Oh, it looked abandoned. But Liam knew better. Places like this didn't die. It just changed masks. The air was thick with dust, but the power still hummed faintly beneath the floors. He stood at the entrance, hood up, breathing slowly, hand trembling as he reached for the rusted door handle. Behind him, Sundar waited quietly, a bag slung over his shoulder, his eyes focused not on the building but on Liam. "You don't have to go in," Sundar said, voice low. "I do," Liam replied without looking back. "I need to know who I was, and what they turned her into." The inside of the facility was colder than outside, like it had stored years of secrets in the walls. They moved through the halls, with the quiet steps of men who had run out of fear, but still hadn't reached peace. Every room looked the same, white. Walls, broken terminals, half-erased, writing on glass boards. But then, finally they found it. A door marked only by a fingerprint scanner blinking red. Liam pulled a small chip from his coat and slid it across the panel. The light turned green dot inside. The room was dimly lit, a long table, 2 chairs, and in the middle of it, a screen. And on that screen her face, Rachel, alive, or something close to it.
"Hello,
"Liam," she said.
and it wasn't a recording. Liam froze. Sundar stepped forward, staring at the screen.
"How are you here?" Rachel smiled gently, almost sadly. "They told me you were dead," she said to Liam. "They told me you broke, that you couldn't be trusted anymore. And you believed them," Liam asked, his voice barely above. "A whisper at first," she said. "But I kept watching. They let me. They said I could help shape outcomes, help guide the model. I told myself it was okay, that you would have wanted me to keep the system clean. But it wasn't clean, Liam. Not even close." Liam stepped closer to the screen, his fists tight. "You helped them. You disappeared. You let me think I buried you. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd erase you for real. It's not just your file. And you believed that too?" She paused. "Yes, because I saw what they could do." The silence that followed was heavier than guilt. Sundar stood between them, a man who had once just wanted to take a walk. And now here he was, watching a husband speak to the digital ghost of the woman he once loved, watching the cracks of the world widen in front of him. "Why now?" Sundar asked. "Why reveal yourself?" Rachel turned her eyes to him. "Because someone gave a homeless man $1, and that one act simple, human, broke the whole illusion. They didn't predict that." Liam laughed, hollow and tired. "They built a system that could track wars, stop crime, shape elections. And it all fell apart because of breakfast and a single $1. Rachel nodded. "People forget the human part, the unpredictable part." And then the lights flickered. The screen glitched. Rachel's image blurred, then sharpened. "Coming," she said quickly. "You have 2 minutes. The data's in the back room. Hard drive, red case. Go now." Liam didn't move. "Liam, please," she begged. "This is your chance. What about you? They don't need me anymore. Just go." But Liam stepped away from the screen. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not leaving again. Not while you're still trapped." Sundar cursed under his breath, grabbed the chair, and smashed open the wall panel beside the screen. Sparks flew. Behind it, wires ran into a hub marked with the system's name, Project Compass. He yanked it loose. Alarms began to wail. "Want to bring it down?" Sundar shouted. "We bring it down." Liam grabbed the drive from the back room while Sundar disabled the last of the power links. As the building began to shut down, emergency lights flashed red. Liam turned to the screen, still glitching, Rachel's face now flickering like candlelight. "I don't know if you're real anymore," he said softly. "But I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else." She smiled once more, then vanished, outside. The night had never felt so loud. They ran, shadows chasing them, the sound of helicopters growing in the distance. But they didn't stop. Not for questions, not for sleep, not even for air. They escaped, barely weeks. Passed, and then the story hit the world. Anonymous leaks. Videos, proof, interviews with former employees. The exposure was slow, like cracks through glass. And for the first time in years, people started to ask real questions. About surveillance. about influence, about the invisible systems shaping their lives. Sundar stepped down as CEO 6 months later, not out of fear, but out of choice. He started a foundation, named after $1. A reminder that change doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it comes from a sidewalk, from a man who lost everything, from a conversation that wasn't supposed to matter. And Liam, he was never seen in public again. But sometimes, people reported seeing him in far corners of the world, teaching, building, reconnecting, trying, somehow, to live like a man who'd been given a second chance. And once, in a small village outside Lisbon, a traveler swore he saw a woman quiet, kind eyes tending a garden and beside her, a man with tired hands and a calm heart. He asked them their names. They just smiled and said nothing. The end.